Hello, Israelites. I'm Carl Thompson, Apostle of Yah and Yahshua. The last video that I made was pretty much a year ago while we were in McLean, Virginia. As I make this video today, we are now in Memphis, Tennessee, and we have been here for over 8 months. Let me start this off by saying, me kind of review or go back and kind of introduce some of the things as to why I'm talking to you today. And more so than anything else, I'm going to read this prophecy to you that Yah gave me when we were in Nairobi, Kenya, Africa. And it's dated, let's see here, October the 15th, 2003, which was a Wednesday. And he said, I brought you here to prepare you to address the world. No weapon formed against you shall ever prosper. The time has come to move. Don't look back. I shall always separate you from the chaff. You are my chosen one to tear down the walls, strongholds, before Jesus comes. And that was then. The true name of the Messiah is Yahshua. And then he says, I love you, my son. Yes, I love Trellis and Miranda so much. Then he said, regarding my children on this land, do not despise them. They have little understanding of why you are here. Continue to be gracious and loving, for they have little understanding of my words. The betrayal shall be corrected. Concentrate on your journey. Be not swayed by the events of last night. You did well. And then Yahshua said to me, he says, I love you, my brother. My blood is mingled with your blood. And so for this particular prophecy that he gave me, we were staying with a very wealthy Kenyan, the wife, and they had a nice compound, about 5 acres, and what they did, it was a part of what they called Lower Kabeti, and it was an area that when the British came and colonized Kenya, that was probably one of their living quarters, the Lower Kabeti. And what they did is they created a large slum for almost a city in itself for Kenyans who were going to serve them and take care of them, the British. And so in that time, and so what happened was that of tearing down the walls. And so from then, when we returned back to Africa, we returned to Lansing, Michigan, my hometown, and we spent about from 2005 through up to almost 2017 is when we began our journey, for what he called us to do. So in that time, between 2005 and 2017, we went through the fire, an intense fire. And so I'll start from 2017, and what Yah was doing was having me reach out or even to rebuke certain ministries. And there was a ministry in Corinth, Texas, that the prophet that was on his mind, he was a Japheth, but he was a prophet. He had an international ministry, and I guess Yah was going to use him as an example of the forthcoming of the changeover from that of the Japheth into the true nation of Israel. And so in 2017, he started having me to send letters of rebuke to that particular ministry. And I believe we sent probably 2 or 3 letters introducing who I was, and at the same time telling them to wake up and telling them who the true covenant people were. And so in 2017, he told us to go to Texas to actually rebuke and to actually help that ministry align themselves with the forthcoming change and the forthcoming change in the kingdom of Yah with the true people of Israel. And so that November, he led me to go to a credit union, the Michigan State University Credit Union, to apply for a loan to go down to Texas to rebuke that prophet. And then what happened is that the miracle was that when we returned from Nairobi, Kenya, Africa, we had bad credit because prior to leaving, we walked away from all our debts and we gave away a car that we had, which was still owed $9,000 on it and all. So we had terrible credit when we came back from Nairobi, Kenya, Africa. Actually, we walked away owing about $23,000, $24,000 in debt. And one of the miracles was when we returned, we found out for what they had written off those loans and things that we had owed to people, but our credit was horrible. And so he had us go to this credit union to apply for a loan to go down to Texas to rebuke this particular prophet. And so my wife and I, we sat down and we filled out the paperwork, and the people that were working with us asked, how much did you want? And we said, we don't know. And I guess either she mentioned it or we mentioned it, and she said around about $6,000, and we said yes. And so the woman finalized the paperwork, and then she said, I'll be right back. And she went back to talk to her manager, and I looked at Charles and I said, oh boy, here goes. And I don't know, probably about 10 minutes later, she came back out and said, well, you all have been approved for a $6,000 loan. And so we took that money, and that was in November of 2017. And so December the 1st of 2017, we packed for Virginia, for Texas, and headed off. And one of the things he instructed us to do was he instructed me to, once we arrived in the land of Texas, was to spit on the land. And that I did. And so when we arrived there, probably within the third day or so, I reached out to one of the original founders of this ministry, and she was a lady, and I introduced myself and told her who I was, and I told her that the Most High has sent me to help you all. And she immediately said, no, you are listening to demons. And she said, I'm going to pray for you. And she prayed for me, and then she hung up the phone, and then she blocked my number from calling her. And so I and my wife, we've always been obedient to what Yah has told us to do. So I just said, okay, Yah, what are we supposed to do now? He said, well, enjoy yourselves. So we ended up staying there for one whole month, and we don't celebrate Christmas and none of the pagan holidays or anything like that, but we enjoyed ourselves. We ate, we watched movies, we went to a couple of movies, we went to the theater for the first time as a family since I and my wife went to Nairobi, Kenya, Africa. And then from there, and what I'm doing is I'm kind of giving you of where we are as of this date. And so we returned that January 1st of 2018, and on the way returning to Michigan, one of the things he said to me, he said, I have a surprise for you. And normally when he does that, it's, this is going to be one of those ding-ding times. But what happened was that we packed up. It took us probably the whole day to get there, and it was snowy by the time we arrived in the northern Michigan and all like that. And we got home safely. We were thinking, thank goodness. And so that following day, I got up to go to Sam's to purchase some groceries for us, and the car broke down. And that was a surprise, but he allowed us to get back to Michigan before he took the car away from us. And then I'm going to fast forward to say Then he was telling us to get ready because he was getting ready to move us forward and to start this part of actually doing his work. And from there we fast forward to the time of the COVID-19. So March of 2020, we packed up all our belongings and we relocated to Texas. And we were in, let's see here, he moved us around and around and around. From, like that I read to you about that of tearing down the walls. Also, I'll back up. In 2018, he led me to purchase a shofar and learn how to blow a shofar. So in the times of where we have been, we pray as a family, and we wait, and we battle in the heavens. And so in the time that we were at in Texas, we lived in Lake Dallas, we lived in Louisville, and we lived in Tyler, and we lived in Denton. And all those places we did not interact with the awakened at all. More so like we are right now, we're secluded. We pray, we come, we tear down the walls, and then he moves us forward. And so from Texas, in one of our worship sessions, we thought we were going to be there for 3 years. But he said to us, now it's time to leave. And so that was August of 2021. From there, he told us to go to Virginia. And to McLean, Virginia is where we ended up. And going back to Nairobi, Kenya, Africa, one of the things he said also about that same time that we had the falling out with this, what I read to you there was actually the night I got into a fight with one of the owner, the wife's, one of her employees. She had several businesses and all, and I got into a fight with one of the employees. But at the same time in the prayer there, he also said to go to Fairfax, Virginia. So last year when we arrived in Fairfax, Virginia, September 23rd of last year, we were in Fairfax, and I thought it was the city Fairfax, but we ended up in the county of Fairfax in McLean, Virginia. And in that time, once again, in a strategic way, we went into Washington D.C. several times. So we walked the land. We kind of did some sightseeing and touring things. But every place that we walked, by the United States Post, the president's, the White House, the Capitol, the pyramid, the reflecting wall, all these pagan buildings and such. We visited these areas specifically because that's what he wanted us to do. So we walked the land, and from that point, he led us to here, Memphis, Tennessee. And at the same regard, that of the same way that before, but one thing, he had me to get a job. So I worked at one of the Home Depots from where we are staying is about 2.1 miles away. And in that, I worked there for 5 months. And in that time, I will walk to and fro. And it was one of the harder assignments that I had. I lost probably about 10 to 15 pounds. Some of my body functions were starting to shut down and all, but it was a tough one. But it was another assignment. And what I'll do here is I will supply you with the words that he gave us in terms of the things that we were doing here in Memphis, Tennessee. And also, one of the things I want you to do, I want you to go to 1 Corinthians, not now, but go to 1 Corinthians, and I want you to read 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 9 through 13. And this is the scriptures about Paul laments about that of the walk of an apostle. And then in that same chapter, I want you to read that first verse. So 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 1. And then after you read that, then read the entire chapter. And so in that, I'll kind of give you an explanation of, once again, a revelation of what is going on. Also, as I talk to you, I'm talking to you in a very strategic way. I don't want to give off more than what needs to be said, And so now, in that, also that first assignment in terms of the actual true journey is to tear down the walls. And then the second assignment also is that of to tell the world who the true Israelites are and return them to their covenant land. And so we're now in that process of going to, I'm going to refer to the actual manifesto. And in the manifesto, the parts that we are starting to work on here are number 3, which talks about reclaim all stolen treasures. Number 6, which says address the nations regarding their roles in existing and reestablishing my people to their land. 7 is that to warn and to forewarn the nations of the consequences of their actions. And then number 8 is to actually exact punishment to the nations for their disobedience. And so at this time, our assignment here in Memphis, Tennessee has come to an end. So now our next assignment is to begin that process of things on his manifesto. Once again, those of the 3, 6, 7, and 8 parts of that particular manifesto. And let me just back up here. Something that I want to make sure that I didn't miss. Also, when he talks about the strongholds, Jeremiah 1:10 talks about how Yah called him to tear down the walls. And then also, once again, that of what Paul wrote in Ephesians 6:10 through 12, talking about tearing down the strongholds, the powers, etc. Okay. So, things you need to do. You need to draw closer to Yah and Yahshua. And you do this by fasting, praying, reading his words, studying his words. These are the things that you can do as we move forward. For the entire Bible is about the nation of Israel. The Bible is your heritage. And so in that, I would say, I'll give you a couple of recommendations as to some ministries they are teachers and they're good. And here they are. First one is Benayah Israel. So once again, it's Benayah Israel. And then another one is Truth Unedited. Next one would be Watchman Reports. And then Thoughts, Camera, Action. Oh, and one more is TO Ministries, and it's TEOTW, and that stands for The End of the World. So these are some of the ministries that we have followed and we have learned and received revelation through that, because we're all a team. And so in that, I would say, share this video with others. And then I ask for your financial support. And I thank you for all your help and prayers, and I and my family thank you. Shalom.